Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go. I hail from rural roots, a country boy through and through. Following my completion of junior college, I tied the knot with my high school sweetheart, Jodi. Yet Jodi harbored a longing for the glitz and glamour of high society. She pored over the society pages, subscribed to every glossy magazine chronicling the lives of the elite, and even perused automobile magazines during dentist visits, familiarizing herself with luxury cars. She possessed an acute awareness of designers and their fashion lines, yearning for a life beyond our means. In an attempt to accommodate her desires, I secured a position at a posh feed store in Omaha catering to the yuppie clientele. This move brought us closer to urban amenities while allowing me to pursue my passion. I excelled in my role, providing exceptional service to customers and earning flexible working hours as a result. Initially content with city living, Jodi eventually sought employment herself, necessitating daycare for our children. Despite this, they adapted well to their new routine. Jodi found employment with a medical device firm, relishing the office environment, which afforded her opportunities to dress up and interact with non-farming individuals. As she delved deeper into her career, her focus shifted away from our family life. I found myself shouldering the majority of childcare responsibilities, from drop-offs and pickups to meal preparation and housekeeping, while she meticulously tended to her wardrobe and appearance. We had diligently squirreled away savings each month with the goal of eventually purchasing our own feed store. However, despite our dual incomes, our savings dwindled. Daycare expenses accounted for some of the drain, but the bulk vanished on beauty treatments, salon visits, and designer clothing. I struggled to comprehend how our financial situation had deteriorated despite our increased earnings. Attempts to broach the subject with Jodi were met with defensiveness and hostility, prompting me to create a separate savings account to safeguard our future goals. She began putting in extra hours at work, engaging in secretive phone conversations, and showing less interest in our intimate moments. Her desire for a flashy new car and talk of cosmetic surgery hinted at a desire for something beyond our marriage. It was evident to me that she was involved in an affair. Though I might be considered a simple man from the countryside, I wasn't naive. At this juncture, salvaging the marriage wasn't my priority. I simply wanted to address the situation and move forward before it escalated further. Pinpointing the exact details was challenging since I wasn't acquainted with her colleagues, but my gut told me the affair, if any, was likely with someone from her workplace. I had the fortune of working alongside a couple of reliable fellows. While they lacked formal education, their work ethic was admirable. Despite my managerial role, I never exploited my authority. The work flowed smoothly as everyone understood their responsibilities and cooperated seamlessly. This approach fostered a strong bond, and Chad and Daniel would prove to be invaluable allies in my endeavor. I couldn't ignore the pattern. Every Wednesday, Jodi dressed to the nines, donning her fanciest lingerie and outfits, clearly putting extra effort into her appearance for work. Sensing an opportunity, I confided in my colleagues, who graciously offered to cover my responsibilities on those days. Parking near the entrance of the Russell Medical Plant, I used the time to catch up on technical reading while keeping a watchful eye. Around 11 a.m., my suspicions were confirmed when Jodi emerged from the building and headed for her car. Following her wasn't difficult, and within minutes she parked at the Holiday Inn, choosing a secluded spot far from prying eyes. Soon after, a stranger in a red Lexus arrived and parked at the opposite end of the lot. When they both headed towards room 125 and disappeared inside, my heart sank, confirming my worst fears. Feeling a mixture of disappointment and queasiness, I realized I needed a plan. Returning to work, I resolved to take my time strategizing my next move. Before leaving the parking lot, however, a surge of frustration prompted me to sabotage her car, snipping two of her valve stems with my baling wire cutters. In hindsight, I should have considered targeting his vehicle as well, but anger clouded my judgment at the moment. The remainder of the day crept by at an agonizing pace. After work, I fetched the kids, prepared dinner, and waited for her to return home. When she finally did, I casually inquired about her day, to which she mentioned having a flat tire. Apparently, one of her co-workers had kindly changed it for her. We left the matter at that without further discussion. The following morning, after dropping the boys off at daycare, I swung by the plant. It didn't take me long to spot the red Lexus, conveniently parked in a reserved spot with a sign bearing the name Felix Brooks, distribution manager. I made a note of it. Through Chad's wife, who worked in the personnel department at Russell, I swiftly gathered intel on Felix. It turned out he was already married and had a history of misconduct, including inappropriate behavior towards a colleague and financial discrepancies in his expense reports. Armed with his personal details, from his address to his social security number, I couldn't yet fathom what I'd do with the information. By evening, Chad, Daniel, and I had completed a productive day's work, allowing us to unwind with a beer before I had to fetch the kids. While I tried to maintain a composed and rational outlook, beneath the surface, my anger simmered, exacerbated by moments of silent tears. I felt broken, incapable of repairing the damage inflicted by Jodi's betrayal. Enduring her presence became increasingly intolerable. I longed for closure, for an end to the torment. The following day brought another stroke of luck when I recalled that one of my valued clients, Batty Russell, happened to be the wife of the president of Russell Medical Company. While I hadn't met him, Batty and I shared a great rapport. I made a conscious effort to be extra cordial with Batty, contemplating whether I could leverage our relationship to my advantage. When her daughter Karen approached us, Karen, in her final year of vet school, joined our conversation as Batty headed to the barn for some chores. We ended up chatting for about an hour, and I found myself enjoying her company, albeit with a tinge of guilt that quickly dissipated after I left. During the weekend, I spent some time in the garage working on a project. Using my welding skills, I fashioned a small piece of flat steel and affixed 4 sharp points to it, crafted from concrete nails for maximum hardness. The resulting plate, measuring about 6 by 6 inches, would serve as my initial tool for exacting revenge through harassment. I crossed paths with Batty again on Tuesday, feeling somewhat downcast as I unloaded the order, my usual jovial demeanor conspicuously absent. My subdued mood didn't escape her notice, piquing her curiosity. "Bob, what's weighing on your mind today? You seem a bit down," Batty inquired, her concern evident in her voice. "I've got some personal issues, Batty. Sorry, I'm not the best company today," I responded, my mood dampened by the weight of my troubles. "Let's grab some coffee and you can talk to me about it," she suggested, leading the way back to her impeccably designed kitchen, reminiscent of a magazine spread with its stainless steel and granite accents. I couldn't help but think how much Jodi would adore it. Seated at the table, Batty placed the coffee down and leaned in, prompting me to open up. "Well, how can you help me, Batty?" I hesitated, unsure of whether I wanted to burden her with my problems. "I won't know unless you tell me what's going on," she reassured me. Reluctantly, I began to share my concerns. My wife, Jodi, works at Russell Medical, and I suspect she's being pressured into a relationship with one of her superiors, but I can't prove anything. "Why do you think this is happening?" Batty inquired, her brow furrowing in concern. "It's mostly little things, but last week I caught them together at the Holiday Inn. Jodi doesn't know I know, and I'm at a loss for how to broach the subject. I don't know if she's being coerced or if it's something she wants. Our family life has suffered. She seems indifferent towards the children and me. The secrecy is what truly bothers me," I confessed, the weight of the situation heavy on my shoulders. "Who is this man?" Batty asked, her tone firm. "I believe his name is Felix Brooks. I'm not sure if Jodi works directly under him or in a different department. I've never met him. Would you like me to look into it?" Batty offered, her voice filled with determination. After a moment's hesitation, I nodded. "If you think there's a discreet way to handle it, I'd appreciate your help. I don't want to cause a scene." "All right, let me see what I can do. I'll bring those oats next Thursday," Batty promised, her resolve evident. Grateful for her assistance, I thanked her before preparing to leave. "Where's Karen?" I inquired as an afterthought. "She's away at school, but she'll be home this weekend. Why don't you bring the boys up so she can meet them?" Batty suggested with a smile. As I left, a glimmer of hope flickered within me. Perhaps things would turn out better than I dared to hope. Perhaps this weekend would mark the beginning of a brighter chapter for me and the boys. The following morning, as rain poured down relentlessly, Jodi meticulously prepared for her routine, yet seemingly significant day. I observed silently, holding back any remarks as I dropped the kids off at the daycare center before heading to work. My colleagues had everything arranged to cover my morning shifts. Chad would utilize my truck to handle deliveries and log entries, with me providing my initials upon my return. Meanwhile, Daniel arrived with his cousin's van and equipped with a jack loaded with our modified steel plate. After ensuring all the necessary arrangements were in place, they set off for their respective tasks, leaving me to make my way to the Holiday Inn. True to form, Jodi arrived promptly and parked in her usual spot, followed closely by Felix. Once they disappeared into the room, I allowed them a brief moment to settle in. Despite the pouring rain, I swiftly retrieved the jack from the van and maneuvered it towards Felix's car. With practiced efficiency, I positioned the jack under his engine block and raised it, the concrete nails piercing the oil pan with a satisfying pop. Swiftly moving to the rear of the Lexus, I repeated the process, this time puncturing the fuel tank. Oil and gasoline began to spill out as I returned the jack to the van. The entire operation was completed in under a minute. Next, I made my way to Jodi's car, cutting slices into 2 valve stems as I had done before. Satisfied with my actions, I prepared to depart. As I drove past Felix's now compromised vehicle, I casually flicked a lit cigarette out the window before speeding away. In my rear-view mirror, I caught sight of flames erupting from the car, followed by the deafening sound of an explosion. Despite the chaos, a sense of relief washed over me. Jodi arrived home from work later than usual, skipping dinner and heading straight to bed. I spent some quality time with the boys, helping them with their evening routine before tucking them in. That night, I opted to sleep on the couch. The next morning, as I got the boys ready for daycare and we went about our morning routine, Jodi remained in bed, showing no signs of getting up or engaging in conversation. Her absence at the breakfast table went unaddressed, and as we left for the day, I noted her car was conspicuously absent from the driveway. Around 9 a.m., just as we finished loading up the trucks, Lieutenant Jack Clark paid me a visit. Despite his friendly demeanor, his unexpected appearance piqued my curiosity. "Can you tell me about your schedule yesterday?" he inquired. "It was a typical day, regular deliveries, nothing out of the ordinary." "Why do you ask?" I responded, puzzled by his line of questioning. Clark requested details about my whereabouts around noon, prompting me to retrieve the delivery logs from the previous day. As I laid them out before him, detailing each stop with its corresponding time and my initials, a faint smirk appeared on his face. "That's quite a meticulous log you've got there. Do you maintain this level of detail every day?" he remarked, a hint of amusement in his tone. "Would you like to review the logs for the past month?" I offered, unsure of where this conversation was leading. He declined, his smile lingering as he finally revealed the reason for his visit. "There was a vehicle damaged at the Holiday Inn in East Oman yesterday, and we're trying to ascertain if anyone had any knowledge of the incident." "Why approach me?" I questioned, sensing a connection to Jodi's absence. "Well, another vehicle parked nearby had 2 valve stems cut, coincidentally belonging to your wife's car. We're exploring if there's any correlation," he explained, shedding light on the situation. His words left me with a mixture of concern and uncertainty, wondering about the implications of Jodi's involvement in the incident. Firstly, I'm baffled as to why my wife's car was at the Holiday Inn parking lot. Secondly, what does that have to do with the damaged car? I questioned, trying to make sense of the situation. The damaged vehicle belonged to a colleague she had a lunch meeting with. Apparently, they were meeting some company clients at the hotel, and the incident occurred during their lunch, Lieutenant Clark explained, shedding light on the circumstances. "Did you speak to the people they dined with?" I inquired, hoping for some clarity. "No, unfortunately, they couldn't recall their names," Clark responded. "Are we going to have an honest conversation here, or are we going to dance around the issue?" I pressed, feeling the need for straightforwardness. He leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing on his lips. "Do you happen to know a man named Felix Brooks?" "I've never crossed paths with the man," I can assure you of that, I replied earnestly. I believe you, Clark said, nodding. I prefer not to meddle in domestic matters, and I hope I won't need to return. Here's my card. Give me a call if anything else comes up, all right? We shook hands, and he offered an apology. I'm sorry for bringing this to your attention. If there's anything I can do to assist, don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you, but you didn't really provide me with any new information, I noted as he walked away. Put the pieces together, he called back over his shoulder. Later that day, upon returning home from work with the kids, I noticed Jodi's car in the driveway. She appeared casually dressed and had dinner prepared. She mentioned feeling unwell and calling in sick, but made no mention of the previous day's events. I opted not to broach the subject either. As she retired to bed early, I took care of the boys once again before settling on the couch for the night. The next day, as I departed with the boys for daycare, Jodi was already bustling about preparing for work. After dropping the boys off, I made a stop at the doctor's office to request a check for STDs. The rest of the day proceeded as usual for Friday. Upon returning home, Jodi was once again present. During dinner, I casually mentioned my plan to take the boys to spend the following day at one of my customers' farms. While extending the invitation to Jodi, I anticipated her inevitable decline. As expected, she cited some shopping she had in mind, and I didn't press the matter further. Whether it was shopping or a clandestine rendezvous, the outcome remained unchanged. Saturday, spent at the Russells' ranch with Karen and the boys, was a delight. We reveled in a day filled with laughter and joy, with Batty's delicious lunch adding to the festivities. Karen bonded effortlessly with the boys, and they reciprocated her affection wholeheartedly. However, Mr. Russell's absence meant I still hadn't had the opportunity to meet him. Batty made no reference to our previous conversation, and it seemed Karen was oblivious to any underlying tension. It pained me to bid farewell and return home, but all good things must come to an end. Back at home, Jodi displayed no interest in our day's adventures. Her indifference was palpable as the boys attempted to share their excitement with her, only to be met with disinterest. Eventually, they ceased their efforts. She did inquire about my sleeping arrangements, noting my absence from the bed. I concocted a vague excuse about work-related sleep troubles, which seemed to satisfy her curiosity. And with that, the matter was laid to rest, never to be broached again. The following week proceeded without any remarkable events. On her birthday, I observed that she hadn't made any special arrangements, leading me to presume that our planned rendezvous for the day had been called off. That suited me fine, as I had a backlog of work to tackle. I took the opportunity to visit a divorce attorney recommended to me, who provided me with informative handouts and brochures, including some intriguing fill-in-the-blank forms. Everything resumed its usual routine until the next Wednesday. On that day, she began with her usual morning routine, followed by meticulously styling her hair. She adorned herself in alluring new black lingerie, applied a fresh fragrance, and even appeared to be wearing new shoes. Careful not to betray my curiosity, I swiftly departed with the boys, anticipating a planned outing. After dropping them off, I discreetly swung by the workplace and noted a shiny new Mercedes SL occupying his parking spot. I hastily recorded the license plate number before rushing back to my tasks. The excitement among my colleagues mirrored my own. We expedited the morning deliveries and manipulated the logs once again, despite suspecting that Jack Clark could see through our facade. Nevertheless, we persisted and enjoyed an extended and leisurely lunch break. While Chad continued with deliveries, Daniel procured 2 sizable bottles of hydrochloric acid from the swimming pool supply store. Meanwhile, I opted to spend my lunch break with Jack Clark. Jack shot me a puzzled glance as I entered his office bearing pulled pork sandwiches, fries, and a couple of Cokes. Offering a cheerful greeting, I settled into the seat opposite him. His knowing smile hinted that he sensed something was amiss. I casually suggested we share lunch and catch up on the latest developments in the car damage case, realizing I needed to keep him occupied for a couple of hours. It promised to be an extended meal indeed. While I engaged in small talk with Jack, Daniel was executing his part of the plan down at the Holiday Inn parking lot. He meticulously applied acid to the Mercedes, targeting the trunk, fenders, deck, convertible top, leather seats, floor mats, and even the dash. To further ensure damage, he introduced mothballs into the gas tank, knowing the havoc it would wreak on the engine if ignited. Any remaining acid was meticulously spread across the tires. Before departing, he discreetly tampered with the valve stems on Jodi's car, a task completed in a mere 15 minutes. Despite our prolonged conversation, Jack eventually voiced his suspicion. "What the hell are you up to?" "I just wanted to ensure I had a solid alibi in case anything happened to Felix Brooks' car today," I casually remarked. "What's so special about today?" Jack inquired. "The pulled pork sandwich was on special," I replied with a smirk. With a swift motion, I pulled out my cell phone and dialed the daycare center. "Hi, Jessica, it's Bob Bryant. I'll be stuck at work this afternoon. Could you call Jodi and ask her to pick up the boys? Thanks a bunch. You can reach her at 874-4329, extension 125. Make sure to catch her as soon as you can." "Okay, thanks again." Jack reclined in his chair, chuckling to himself as he savored the taste of the pork sandwiches. The room fell into a brief silence before Jack spoke up again. "Do you think I should call Mr. Brooks and inquire about his car?" "Why on earth would you want to do that?" I questioned. "Do you happen to have his contact information handy?" Jack pressed. I provided him with both Brooks' cell number and the number of the Holiday Inn, room 125. "Take your pick." Jack activated the speakerphone and dialed the hotel number. After a few rings, Felix Brooks picked up, sounding out of breath. "Hello, who is this?" "Mr. Brooks, this is Detective Clark. I wanted to inform you that we're still investigating the vandalism to your car," Jack stated calmly. Brooks sounded startled. "Why are you calling here? How did you get this number?" "I'm a policeman, Mr. Brooks. Have you acquired a new car yet?" Jack inquired. "Yes, I have. Why do you ask?" Brooks replied, sounding wary. "Just making sure we don't encounter a repeat of the last incident. Is the car with you now?" Jack queried. "Yes, it's parked out in the lot." Brooks confirmed. "Is everything all right?" he inquired. "Let me check," Jack responded. We listened as Felix muttered in the background, presumably peering out the window at the parking lot. There were a few indistinct noises followed by a low groan. He returned to the phone. "Something seems off. I'll have to get dressed and go check. I'll call you back." "Fair enough, but Mr. Brooks, why aren't you dressed already?" I probed. "None of your damn business. I have to go," he snapped before hanging up abruptly. Jack glanced at me with a satisfied grin. "Happy?" "Absolutely. Anyway, I have to get back to work. If you need anything, give me a call." "All right. Maybe we can do lunch again next week." "I hope not. This needs to end soon before someone gets hurt," Jack remarked gravely. I returned to my tasks. Chad had ensured the logs were in perfect order, and Daniel had discreetly disposed of the acid bottles where they wouldn't be discovered. The evening at home promised to be eventful. Jodi had picked up the boys but retired to bed early without a word. The following day, Jack paid me a visit. He detailed the extent of the car damage, explaining that Felix's insurance claim was pending due to the previous Lexus incident. The vehicle was deemed totaled, leaving Felix out of pocket by over $60,000. Despite Jack's assurance of my innocence, Felix remained convinced of my involvement. While Jack may have suspected my role, he couldn't prove anything, and perhaps, deep down, he didn't want to. As for Jodi's tires, I never inquired, and no one volunteered any information. Since Jodi had remained silent about the whole ordeal, I resolved it was time to put an end to it. My STD test results came back negative, reassuring me. I had already completed the paperwork for the lawyer to initiate the divorce proceedings. I intended to take the boys out to the Russells' ranch over the weekend, just in case Karen happened to be there. If not, we'd spend the day with Batty. The only unresolved issue was the lack of concrete evidence regarding the extramarital affair. The weekend turned out well. Karen was present, much to the delight of the kids, and we all enjoyed ourselves immensely. It felt like we were a family again, a feeling I sorely missed, as did the boys. Karen remained oblivious to the turmoil brewing, though thankfully she didn't pry. Before bidding farewell, Batty gave me a reassuring wink and assured me that everything would work out. I received an enticing job offer about 100 miles away. It offered more pay, a superior position, and the possibility of buying into the business in the future. It seemed like the perfect opportunity, except for the fact that it would take us away from Karen. The following Wednesday, Jodi went through her dress-up routine once more. I wasn't sure what kind of car her boyfriend was using, but it was evident she was preparing for another rendezvous with him. I assumed they were still frequenting the same place. I knew I had to take action, but hadn't devised a plan yet. As the guys and I pondered our next move, Batty Russell unexpectedly pulled up. She gestured for me to join her in the car and drove us silently to the plant. Parking in the rear, we entered through a private entrance directly into Mr. Russell's office. Batty facilitated introductions, and his secretary promptly served us coffee. We engaged in light conversation for a while until I couldn't contain my curiosity any longer. "Was there a specific reason you brought me here?" I finally asked. Mr. Russell chuckled. "It's time to wrap up this charade. Batty has briefed me on the situation, and we've conducted a little in-house investigation. Once everything's set, we'll proceed. You should have all the necessary information by day's end. If I do anything that embarrasses you, Bob, I apologize in advance. It's not my intention to cause you any harm." We continued chatting to pass the time, and Batty noticed my grin when the topic shifted to Karen. Despite my attempts to remain discreet, I evidently failed. The ringing phone captured everyone's attention. Mr. Russell's demeanor shifted as he took the call. "What's happening?" "All right. Thanks for the update. You know what to do next, correct?" Mr. Russell's smile returned. "Everything's set. We can proceed. Felix and your wife are in their usual room at the Holiday Inn. Felix drove a company BMW, which is a violation of company policy, so it's been returned to the plant. Unfortunately, it seems your wife also has a couple of flat tires. Seems to be becoming a bit of a tradition." He activated the speakerphone and dialed the room. "Felix, this is Mr. Russell. Apologies for the interruption, but we need to discuss a crucial matter." Felix's response was hesitant, marked by stuttering. "Yes, okay, no problem. How did you get this number?" "That's irrelevant, Felix. What's pertinent is that the legal department has been alerted to a potential sexual harassment situation. I need accurate answers from you. Is there a female company employee with you in the room?" Mr. Russell inquired. There was a momentary silence, followed by indistinct background chatter. "Yes, sir, there is," Felix replied. "Felix, is she there willingly, or are there any elements of coercion or threat involved?" Mr. Russell pressed. "No, sir, absolutely not. There's been no coercion whatsoever. She's here of her own volition. I didn't compel her to do anything," Felix clarified. "Excellent, Felix. Your honesty on this sensitive matter is appreciated. We'll draft a statement to confirm that. Now I need to speak to the young lady to verify. Could you put her on, please?" Mr. Russell requested. More murmurs filled the background before Jodi came on the line. "Sir, how can I assist you?" she asked. "Jodi, did Mr. Brooks coerce or threaten you in any manner to accompany him?" Mr. Russell inquired. "No, sir. He didn't threaten me at all," Jodi responded. "Good to know. So it was consensual, and you weren't subjected to any intimidation. Is that correct?" Mr. Russell sought confirmation. Another brief pause ensued, followed by hushed discussions. Eventually, Jodi returned to the line. "Yes, sir. It was consensual." "Excellent. When you and Felix return to the plant, we'll have the statements ready for you to sign." "Can you put Felix back on, please?" Mr. Russell requested. "Sir, how did you know my name?" Jodi questioned. "Don't concern yourself with that, Jodi. It's inconsequential," Mr. Russell assured her. Once Felix rejoined the call, Mr. Russell instructed him to head back to the plant to sign the necessary papers in the legal department. After hanging up, Mr. Russell flashed a smile. "Batty, why don't you take Bob out for lunch and return in a couple of hours? By then, the legal team should be finished, and we can all resume our normal lives," Mr. Russell suggested. We enjoyed a delightful lunch, during which I struggled to contain my gratitude. Batty insisted that we refrain from discussing the matter further or mentioning what had transpired ever again. Additionally, she made me promise not to divulge anything to Karen. It was a promising sign. I shared my excitement about the new job offer with Batty, who expressed her happiness for both the boys and me. After lunch, we made our way back to the plant, where I obtained notarized copies of Felix and Jodi's statements. Both affirmed that their affair was consensual. The legal team assured me that this evidence would be sufficient for my lawyer to proceed with the divorce. Felix and Jodi were promptly terminated, their personal belongings already packed, and they were escorted off the premises. Unfortunately, neither of them had transportation available. Batty kindly lent me her car, assuring me I could return it the following day. With the papers in hand, I made a trip to the lawyer's office. Batty made multiple copies of each document. One set was designated to be sent to Felix's wife. At the bank, I closed our accounts and settled all outstanding credit card balances, promptly canceling them. Next, I contacted the gas, water, electric, and phone companies to arrange for utility disconnection by Friday afternoon. A visit to Jack Clark ensued, where I cheekily informed him of my virtuous behavior, eliciting laughter from him. I informed the landlord of my impending departure and bid farewell to my colleagues at work, receiving well wishes tinged with regret. Daniel accompanied me to the Russell Ranch with my truck, facilitating the return of Batty's car. As I prepared to pick up the boys and head home, a sense of apprehension crept over me. Upon arrival, Jodi's absence from the driveway caught my attention. Inside, she sat on the couch, tears streaming down her face, a stark departure from her usual stoicism. 2 boxes of her personal belongings from work lay nearby. After tending to the boys, I stood by her side, silently offering her the chance to speak. "You just had to do it, didn't you? You had to ruin everything in my life," she choked out between sobs. "Why couldn't you just mind your own business? You had no right to interfere in mine." I was astounded by her self-centered perspective, still viewing the situation as if it solely revolved around her. She showed no regard for our children or me, let alone Felix's wife, Amelia. Our family, our life, and our plans held no significance to her. Her sole focus remained on her own actions, indifferent to everything else. Yet strangely, I felt a sense of relief knowing that I wouldn't be tethered to her for the rest of my life. Without a word, I retreated to the shower. Later, as I prepared the boys for bed, she retreated to the bedroom, shutting the door behind her. The following day, I brought the boys to work with me, ensuring that everything was in order and that Chad and Daniel could manage the system I had implemented. We gathered boxes from various stores in preparation for the move. Passing by the Holiday Inn, I noted Jodi's absence, assuming her car had been repaired by now. Repairing the flat tires must have severely depleted her shopping budget for the past month. Upon our return home, Jodi was nowhere to be found. We only packed clothes and toys, leaving the rest for Jodi to handle. Little did she know, by the next day, all the utilities would be shut off. Filled with anger, I took the boys out, leaving Jodi watching silently as we drove away. We spent the night at a motel, seeking refuge from the turmoil. The next morning, I dropped the boys off at daycare, leaving Jessica some cookies and party favors as a token of appreciation. It was the boys' last day, and I wanted them to enjoy it with their friends. Before leaving, Jessica pulled me aside. "What happened with your wife last week?" I didn't want to pry, but now that you're leaving, I'm dying to know, Jessica inquired. She was really upset when I called. She demanded to know where I got that number, and when I mentioned you gave it to me, she started squaring up a storm. She didn't say much when she picked up the boys, but I could tell she was fuming. "I'm sorry, Jessica. I kind of set you up," I admitted. Jodi was having an affair. She was at the Holiday Inn with her boyfriend, and I thought if I got you to call and interrupt their party, she might reconsider the whole thing. But it didn't work out like I hoped. Instead, she ended up getting mad at both of us. I'm serving her with divorce papers this afternoon, and the boys and I are leaving for a new job right after I pick them up. It was a low move on my part, and I apologize for dragging you into it. I visited my divorce lawyer, finding everything neatly prepared. Custody of the kids was granted to me, with Jodi granted visitation rights at her discretion. Frankly, I didn't anticipate her taking much interest in them anyway. As for the rest, our assets were divided evenly, although there wasn't much to divide. There was no spousal support, child maintenance, or financial settlements of any sort. I relinquished all the furniture, appliances, and household items to her. I had no desire for them. She kept her car, which I gladly relinquished, as it had become notorious for its recurrent flat tires. Handing over the papers to Jodi seemed like the final formality. Unless she contested it, the divorce would be finalized within 3 months. Attached to the divorce paperwork was a notarized statement from Felix and Jodi, with a marginal note from the lawyer indicating that these statements would remain confidential if all terms of the divorce were accepted. No further inquiries were made. As I pulled up to the driveway, seeing her car there assured me she was home. I sat there for what felt like an eternity, grappling with a surge of conflicting emotions. I had loved Jodi deeply. She was the only woman I had ever been truly close to. I had always assumed our relationship was normal, failing to recognize any dissatisfaction on her part. Her actions were deceptive, yet I couldn't help but feel partially responsible for my lack of attentiveness. Knocking on the door of my own home felt surreal. When she opened it, she looked weary, and her offer of a drink seemed to emphasize the distance between us. I handed her the papers, but she didn't immediately open them. Instead, she held them in her hands, her gaze shifting from the documents to me and back again. "Why?" I asked, unable to discern whether her expression conveyed anger or sadness. After a brief pause, she finally opened up, her tone tinged with a mix of resentment and regret. "He smelled like aftershave. You smelled like fertilizer. He wore Armani suits while you wore jeans. He dined on lobster and steaks while you preferred ribs and burgers. He owned a London Fog overcoat while you had your Carhartt. He drove a fancy car while you drove a truck. His nails were always manicured while yours were perpetually dirty. He had a prestigious career while you remained a farm boy. Need I continue?" she retorted. "I yearned for a life that you couldn't provide, Bob. I'm sorry we got married. I did so for all the wrong reasons. I saw you as an escape from my parents, failing to look beyond the immediate. I was foolish to believe you could fulfill my desires. I love my children, but I regret having them. It sounds awful, I know, but I lack maternal instinct. I hoped finding someone who could fulfill my dreams would bring contentment, but it only deepened my dissatisfaction. I misled you, I failed as a mother, but I'm not sorry for pursuing my aspirations and seeking something better." "What about his wife? What about your husband? What about your children? What about your family?" I interjected. Her demeanor shifted abruptly. My questions seemed to provoke anger, and any semblance of remorse vanished from her expression. "I couldn't care less about any of that. It's my turn now. I want to live the life I've always dreamed of. A husband from the farm and 2 messy kids don't fit into that picture. I've got your damn papers, so just leave and let me get on with my life," she spat out bitterly. Her words made my decision simple. I turned and walked out without another word. When I picked up the boys, Jessica offered to make more phone calls if needed. Later, I called the utility companies and asked them to delay disconnection until the end of the month. Despite everything, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for her. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized without a hitch. I never heard a peep from Jodi. According to the lawyer, everything proceeded smoothly as planned. While my new job was fulfilling, I missed out on the opportunity to buy the business. Someone else snatched it up, along with a prime quarter section of land. My boss mentioned they intended to turn it into a horse breeding farm. While my job remained secure, my aspirations of owning my own place took a setback. 2 weeks later, construction commenced next to the feed store. We speculated on what was being built, and eventually, one of the guys approached the site engineer for answers. To our surprise, it was revealed to be a veterinary clinic specializing in large animals. It piqued my interest momentarily, but I brushed it off as wishful thinking. Remarkably, the entire building was erected in less than 60 days. The new owner was scheduled to make an appearance on Saturday, prompting the boys and me to swing by during our lunch outing, filled with a sense of curiosity. Suddenly, both boys began excitedly yelling, "Karen, Karen." There she was, looking radiant as ever, accompanied by Batty. Karen had pursued her veterinary degree and now aimed to race show horses while managing the large animal clinic. As she showed the boys around the new facility, Batty and I caught up. We all went out for lunch together, where Karen shared her plans to build a new home on the property to be closer to her work. The ride home that evening was filled with joyous grins from ear to ear. 5 years later, Karen's passion for raising beautiful horses had blossomed into a thriving business. Her clinic was renowned for its success. Meanwhile, I had expanded my ventures, now boasting 6 feed stores. The boys had gained 2 baby sisters, whom they adored dearly. Every weekend, my mother-in-law, Batty, and Mr. Russell, whose first name I never did learn, visited us without fail. However, Jodi never made an effort to visit the boys.